with this. Everybody, welcome to A-Round. This is a community of decision makers from software startups that are pre-Series A or have raised their A. That's kind of the stage of life that we're looking at. And the people involved, the members, while anyone can watch the live stream, the members are heads of engineering, VP of customer success, chief C-level, chief revenue officer, and obviously founder. So you need to have raised some money or have been sufficiently bootstrapped to be inside of this A-Round community. So to start, one of the things that I want to do to have this, to support the people that are here, is to give everybody just a chance to kind of say who they are and what they're looking for. So people that are inside of A-Round can hear it and hopefully answer these requests. And then since we're live stream on LinkedIn Live, that will give anyone out there that chance to go and interact. So just to start off, it's super quick. Name, role, company, and what you're looking for. So an example would be, I'm Josh Rosenthal, community manager at A-Round, and I'm looking for those leaders at those startups that are at or before their Series A to join A-Round. So this is the benefits. We need to go and have both the people that are specific experts as well as the companies that can benefit from specific experts. So to create that win-win community. So to get started, since you showed up first, Mr. Sebastian, let me kick it on over to you.
All right, super fast. Well, I am one of those types of people. I have a little business I'm kicking off. I help lots of companies in the same headset. The reason I'm here is to socialize with and to learn from, my tribe. A lot of smart people out there, can't learn enough.
All right, Mr. Philippe.
Hi, everyone. Philip, twisting my head around bridging security and AI and trying out some ideas. So I'm always intrigued by listening to what everyone does.
Excellent. In fact, that is going to be the theme for November. In fact, originally, I was going to be working with a university to go and talk about that exact intersection, and we're putting content together. We brought in an excellent VC that does have this type of focus and experience, and understandably, they're like, let's kind of move this out a little bit and get a little bit deeper than what we're going to do. Our original plan was just to go and get it started, create some interesting content. It was going to be an in-person event, a little bit more than the 30 minutes that we have here. Something just to do it, throw our hands up and cry success, and then improve it for the next one. But I totally understand the idea of waiting and doing a little bit better. So talking about waiting, doing it a little bit better, one of the people that I want to introduce is Ben. And so he's the author of Strategic DevOps, Strategically Scaling Organizations. And one of the things that he's going to get into is one of the facets of the book that he recently published. I know that you've been working on it for a while, which is the idea of balancing the objectives of both the technology and the business. And they always need to be in balance, or at least have this resultant balance where it tips one way and sloshes the other, but ultimately creates that levelness. So with that, Ben, if you would go and start with the actionable, with the slide for the actionable intelligence, and just give a quick intro for you, kind of plug yourself for a moment, and then take it away as a presenter.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I'm Ben Abrams. I come from an engineering, security, infrastructure background. I'm now on a little bit more of the business side in terms of founder. I moved out to Thailand about a year ago. and I'm building internet-connected laundromats, which might sound both simultaneously very interesting and not interesting at all. And I think that's actually kind of the fun part of it, is that we kind of get to play both sides of it, and still kind of leverage my technical background while really just looking at how do we help our communities out. So I'm looking in general to this community to just network with people, to both mentor and find mentors, and what I'm hoping that people will get out of this talk today is understanding that there is this inherent conflict between the business and engineering. And while I can't give you a solution in 15 minutes because that's simply just not possible, I hope that at least you will come out with a little bit better idea of understanding why it exists. And once you understand why it exists, it's much easier to tackle a problem once you can identify it. And if anyone needs further help, I'm happy to talk with them offline about it, as well as do consulting as necessary if they're really in a significant amount of need for it. So the talk is called Bridging Development and Business Reality, right? And again, the book that I wrote was, strategic DevOps. And when people talk about DevOps, they talk about developers and operators and this inherent conflict between these two groups, right? And from the business side, people are like, yeah, those sound like the same thing to me, right? And what I've learned is that true DevOps is learning about bridging gaps, right? Understanding that we're all inherently on the same team. We might have different direct reports. We might have different areas of focus, right? But fundamentally, we're all here to build business value for the organization. And, how do we go about that? The first step is always kind of, again, identifying our problem set and creating a shared language that we can actually use to communicate about it. So this particular talk, I am choosing to limit myself to exactly 2 slides other than the intro, and that is intentional. Most of the time, I want you to just kind of look at this and listen to what I'm saying. So what is this inherent conflict, right? Businesses, to create real value, and I'm not talking about share price, I'm not talking about, what some appraiser says it is worth today or what it will be worth in 10 years based on, a bunch of forecasts, right? But what is true value is being able to provide something that a customer needs, right? Whether your customer is, a citizen of your country, fulfilling a mission statement, whether it's, government, whether it's private sector, right? We're all trying to provide something of value to our customers. And inherently, in order to do that, we have to understand that there are 3 kind of core elements, if you will, that, is required to build any kind of product or service, right? We want to always, move as fast as we can, right? We build faster and faster engines for cars, for airplanes, right? The same is true for any sort of business, right? We want to be able to innovate as quickly as possible. We want to move things to market. We want to be responsive to our customers, right? At the same time, we also have these other components, right? So over on the cost efficiency, right? We've got things like burn rate and headcount and technical debt. And we've also got this stability or security, right, which corresponds to reliability, compliance, customer trust, right? And what we have here is what I'm referring to as the Venn triangle, right? We cannot, if we move super fast and we have no customer trust, right, we just go out of business, right? Similarly, maybe with the exception of OpenAI, no one really has a endless budget. We all have certain finances. We raise a certain amount of money. We need to ensure that we can do things in a way that actually allow us to function as a business, right? Because most of us just have limited resources. And so really what this is about is trying to find the intersection of these three things and understand that there is no actual correct answer to it. It has to be something that you have to evaluate at every stage of your business development, right? When you're a brand new startup, right, you have to look at, well, if you don't have a product, right, you can't fulfill your mission statement, right? So in the beginning, you have to move much faster, right? You have to be much more agile because you have to build something that people are wanting, right? But you have to be aware of eventually, right, once you have a real customer and it's no longer theoretical, when people start giving you your data, right, people start caring about, are you secure, right? Do you have compliance needs, right? Are you regulated? Do I as a customer trust you, right? And at the same time, again, we also have this operational cost, right? And technical debt. And so really the question is, how do we kind of go about that? And really, I can't, again, in 15 minutes, I just can't give you an answer to that, right? But what's important is understanding that there is an inherent conflict, right? And if we don't understand that, right, the business and the developers and the operators, right, we all talk past each other, right? This is the most important thing. We need this new shiny feature because, X, Y, Z, right? But so we have to kind of look at this as the organization grows based on where we are, where we're planning on going, what are the things that kind of guide us, right? And so realistically, we just have to find the balance, right? And we have to understand that there's, no way to have a perfect answer. And if we acknowledge that, then we can actually do something about it, right? The business people can have a seat at the table with the developers and the operators, right? And instead of talking past each other, we can say, okay, I understand. We may, when we launch a brand new product, we probably don't have backups. Probably having huge gaping security holes all over the place, right? We're doing those in the early stages so that we actually have something to sell, right? Because if we don't have something to sell, then we run out of money and then we can't fulfill the mission statement. So it doesn't matter how reliable we are, it doesn't matter what our compliance is if we can't actually reach the stage where we fulfill that mission statement, right, for whoever our customer is. So kind of what I'm getting at here is that we all live in this triangle, and most companies are just completely unaware that they exist in this triangle. They're kind of just winging it. And not from a standpoint of like I said, you kind of have to wing it, right? There is no answer. You can't go to business school, you can't go to engineering school to get an answer to this, right? You have to wing it, you have to be adaptable, right? But if you don't understand what these different concerns are from these different groups, right, you'll never actually be able to come up with a real balance. And this is the reason why so many startups just simply fail, right? They focus too much on any one of these areas. And, it's kind of unfortunate, right? But it's inevitable, right? So, essentially, that's kind of really the core of it. And honestly, I'd like to just have a conversation with people about, how do they see this problem set in their own organizations and what are they doing? And I'm happy to give kind of my own experiences on that as someone who's done multiple startups, who's done Fortune 500s and as people who's, built their own company kind of from the ground up. So,
So I can talk to that fledgling use case, the one at the end, but luckily we have two people here who I think can speak to the bigger issues. So let me push it on over to you two, Philip or Sebastian, if you guys want to jump in, or if I put you on the spot, just ping pong it right back to me.
Well, I don't necessarily need to start with a question or a comment. What would be interesting, I'd love to hear, is if a ping pong it slightly differently, which is to Ben, if you could give me like an actual example, say from the laundromat, where you had to make a tough decision and how you sort of broke that tie, if you will, and whether you were happy, how did you know you made the right one?
yeah, so, first off, I'll say that I am new to the business side and I come much more heavily from the engineering side. And so I have a certain bias, if you will, right? And so I have to be very careful when I start talking about things like reliability and performance and all of that, right? That all of those different things don't outweigh what the actual business needs are, right? So I am using a franchise, right? So I am not writing all the software myself, right? I am using other people's solutions. And, if I were to put on my engineering hat, right, I'd have been like, you know what, this solution is not what I want, right? I can do better, right? I can build this all myself, right? But if I did that, I would be 6 to 12 months out before I built my first laundromat, right? As opposed to being several months out from my first build out, right? Another kind of core aspect there was, again, things were built the way they were, and the franchise had done certain things, and I wanted to optimize our internal operations, right? So most people imagine laundromats, and it's coin operated for the most part, right? But as moving towards a internet digital kind of solution, right? There's this brand new opportunity to rely on digital payment rather than having all of these coins that have to be collected, and you have to worry about, coin capacity in these machines, and you have to worry about taking it over to the bank, and having coin counting fees and all sorts of interesting things there that are really not that interesting, right? And so when I started working on trying to figure out how do we build this out in a much more scalable operation, right, I came across this a situation where I could have accepted the default answer from the franchise and a vendor that they gave me, right? And I could have given away 3% of my sales for honestly no good reason. But I dug in a little bit deeper as an engineer, and I double clicked and I said, well, what's your value add here? Why am I being charged this 3%? What are you actually doing for me? And with enough, double clicking as an engineer and also as a business owner, right, I realized that I could save 2.5% of that 3% by just calling up, a vendor and saying, give me a key, and then give that key to this vendor. And then they're like, okay, yeah, cool, we'll only charge you 0.5%, right? So, finding that balance is difficult, and trying to find, I'm actually kind of in the process right now of scaling out to my second and third laundromat, which it's only been 2 months since I launched my first one, right? And, there's a lot of things I would like to do a little bit differently, if you will, right? But in order to keep the business going and, operating at a certain scale level, right, we have to accept certain things that we don't love, right? And what we have to do is we have to really understand what are the things we can and can't live with, and what are the reasonable solutions that are interim, that are short-term band-aids, medium-term solutions, as well as, keeping our eye on what do we need, right? When we hit 15 laundromats, when we hit 150 laundromats, right? I honestly am not terribly interested in running 1 or 2 laundromats. That just doesn't excite me at all. I'm much more interested in trying to build a scalable solution that allows me to run 150 laundromats and, have, the appropriate technology in place, having the appropriate teams in place that really it moves from being a laundromat company to an investment company that is enriching people's lives here in Thailand, both by serving the community's needs, right? Giving them what they need, from a customer perspective, as well as offering, employment opportunities, not just, lower level jobs, but also having, accountants and lawyers and, business admins and engineers and, our own service, staff at some point, right? Those are all things that I want to be able to do, right? But I have to, as much as I want to keep my eye on where I want to be in 5 years, right? I have to look at where I am today, and I have to make those trade-offs, and it's difficult. Some days I feel like I'm not always making the right decisions, but when you look at it over, the overall, I've made more, right decisions than wrong decisions. And, back when I used to run engineering teams, I had a phrase, and it kind of became a mantra for me. And it was, if today was less shitty than yesterday, we have won, right? And really what we're talking about is incremental improvements, right? Looking at the big picture and saying, you know what, we can solve this massive problem tomorrow, right? Today we got to solve the smaller problem. Tomorrow we got to solve the medium problem. And next week we got to solve the larger problem. And I'm not talking specifically about today or tomorrow, right? I'm talking about kind of an overall time horizon as to how a business functions and scales, right? Because we just simply cannot scale from 1 to 150 locations in 3 months. Even if you had all the money in the world, it just wouldn't work. So I hope that sort of answered some of your question.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Going and making these trade-offs super important, and going and figuring it out to get what you want. One aspect in this, which is interesting, is one of these things that kind of brings me back, frankly, Sebastian, to something that you had said in your presentation when we're talking about the VC interest in how a company grows versus how the decisions one might make when running a good business rather than some type of rocket ship versus that whole, and also down to that lifestyle business that people sometimes talk about, right? How is it that you are intending to grow? What are the constraints that you have based upon investor needs to what it is that you do? Just extra factors. Philip, you come from the tech side as well. There's a balance in there as far as pen testing and other activities that one might take to go and put load on the system. I don't know if you've seen it from your side.
The way I look at it, when I look at the schema you presented, what typically strikes me is that I've worked for very large companies, startups, even pre-funding, and what I typically see is like stability and security doesn't look typically the most concerning issue when you start out, but I've seen it coming back straight in your face later on. It bites you because because this is, in my opinion, first of all, it's very hard to catch up when you scale, because when you scale, you need to do it quadruple. I mean, because
Multiplicative, if not
yeah,
exponential,
it
right?
works in two axes. You need to grow, have new stuff, but also do the security stability afterwards, which I think, yeah, is an easy one to not do when you start out. The technical debt will be immense if you don't do it. And to be very honest, I've been looking into a lot of startups and large companies, and yeah, it's typically what happens. I've seen companies that are worth billions and that are sold for 300 million, and then you get a pile of stuff that is hardly working, and that's just because of everything is blown up fast. If the feature is half working, it's fine, but it comes back at a given point. Not to speak from, okay, it's perhaps less in your case, but when it is in sorry, when it is in security or in, let's say, SaaS kind of businesses, you have an immense churn rate. And yeah, fairly honest, I see it happening everywhere. And last but not least, okay, I agree with the innovation, time to market, responsiveness, but I think we also very often overlook the uniqueness of an idea. I mean, developing the 50th chatbot, I'm sure you're not going to make it, yeah, or going to create the next clone of Zoom or Dropbox, you're probably going to fail. And I think a lot of these struggles and dangers are in that one. And of course, I know how it is when you're right in the middle of it. People are asking for innovation and quicker and whatever, but yeah, you couldn't have put better the triangle BIS value in the middle, and it's hard to figure out. But my idea is that, or my feeling is mostly that it's typically going to speed, agility, and even cost and efficiency is, I think, not always the biggest concern. Worked for startups in the US, and yeah, hard to imagine how much money they burn in 1 or 2, 3 years.
Yeah.
Real quick, just because, just administratively, we are at the end, the scheduled end, so I am going to be ending the LinkedIn Live, and ARON members, please stick around. So to everybody out there in live land, take care. Thanks for joining in, and I hope to continue to see you. Everyone that's written me, thank you very much. Glad to go and have the meetings that we have had and receive the interest that we have. So tune in. We have some interesting content coming up for November, and then in December, we're going to be experimenting with a very new content type that's going to be very interactive. So take care, everybody out there on in LinkedIn Live, and ARON members, stick around.